So we're type in stylized type. Let's duplicate that. And the second thing I want you to type in is I want you to type in graphic styles. Now, graphic styles and stylized type are pretty much the same thing, but the difference is when you stylize your type through the appearance palette, you're using multiple fills, multiple strokes, and things like that, which is fine. That's what we learned. When you do a graphic style, we're utilizing the appearance palette, but we're basically going to work with almost like a template. So whatever style that we create, we're going to create a template so that we can use it with other things. So let's stylize our type or stylize this box, and then we're going to use that as a template for other things, right? So let's select that box you have and make sure the box does not have any stroke on it and it doesn't have any effects on it. Okay, so right now my box has this effect on it, and if it does, I'm going to take it and throw it in the trash. Okay, so from here we're going to stylize this thing, right? So I'm going to take this box, and the first thing I want to do is I'm going to add a stroke color. So whatever color that you want this to be, I'm going to add, let's say, a purple, and I'll make the inside be, let's go with the, let's see if this color combination is okay for me. So I'm going to increase my point size. Okay. And basically I'm going to add another stroke. So I'll add another stroke, and I will increase that and add this to be a darker color, right? And what we had talked about before was if it's a larger size that's behind the stroke, you're going to see it on both sides. So in my case, for this particular shape, I only want it to be to the outside, so I'm going to align that to the outside. So this way I can make this down in size just a little bit. And now what I'm going to do is, because I have a couple of these multiple strokes, I'm going to put one more stroke, but this one more stroke is going to be on top, and it's going to be a light color. So I'll select the one here on top, create a new stroke, and make this maybe like a light, I don't know, orange or so. And make this size smaller. And I want this to be set aligned to inside. Okay? So, as you can see, we have basically 3 strokes, 1 fill. All right? Now I'm gonna start to stylize this thing, and the way that I'm gonna stylize it is, first, we already know how to do this scribble effect, so I'm gonna add a scribble effect to the first stroke that's on top, right? So I'm gonna take this, go to effects, right in the bottom of the appearance palette. I'm gonna go down to stylize, and I'm gonna select scribble. And I'm going to choose one of the defaults. Okay, maybe something like that. Press OK. And then I'm going to try to stylize this a little bit using another type of effect called distort and transform. So I go to effects, distort, transform, and then I'm going to go down here to transform. What this is going to do is it's going to allow me to preview what I'm doing here, and I can start to move this thing horizontal or vertical, and you want to make sure that if you're applying this effect, you want to make sure that you are selected on the stroke that you want to affect. So I'm selecting the first stroke in effect, distort, transform, transform. So I click on my preview, I use horizontal, and basically what I'm doing is I want to move this in the vertical position, and I want to move it up a little bit so I can see some of this. It's almost look like it's giving me this depth into the shape. Let me zoom in. Now, if you want this to have more depth, what I could do is I can select copies, right? So if I said, okay, I want, let's say 20 copies. Right? It would move in increments based off what I've chosen on how to move. Right? So I basically just want maybe something like this, but I don't want 20 copies. Maybe I want 3 copies. And so it just kind of makes it a little bit thicker, and it just does kind of what I want it to do. Maybe, maybe something like that. I don't know. And it just all depends on what you're trying to go for. I'm not sure why I'm doing this, but I'm just testing some stuff out. Random, and I'm just applying something. So I have this look that I have going on, right? When I can also do scale. So you can scale as it duplicates to the copy, you can tell it to scale as well. And you can tell it to turn each copy. Okay, so I'm just going to do something like that. That's fine. It's just a funky design. Same thing with the back darker shape or shadow stroke. I'll go down to effects, distort, transform, and I'll move that a little bit. So I'll move it down, like that. I'm gonna scrunch it in a little bit just to give it some depth. Scrunch it vertical and move it over this side. All right. So I gave it that, and then maybe I wanted to give it some sort of other type of thing where I wanted to maybe do like sort of a zigzag effect. So I click on zigzag, click on preview, and start to make it look crazy. So we're stylizing this thing. I press OK. I press Command Y. And if you're looking at Command Y, which is in outline mode, then it's just one box. It doesn't have any, look or feel to it. It looks like one box. So this Command Y gives you the outline modes. This is the crazy thing that you did with the effects palette. Now, let's say I want to apply this to a star or any other shape. This is where the graphic style comes in. So I'm going to take this shape in my appearance palette, and I want everybody to look up here at the screen. I'm going to use this shape in the appearance palette. I'm going to click right here on this icon next to path and go to window, graphic styles. Where are you? There it is. And in my graphic style palette, I can take this and I can either drag this into this palette, or I can click on new graphic style. Let's take this and I'll drag it in. Now, my style is saved. If I choose a star shape or any other type of shape, when I click on this style, this is what happens.
Wait, can we do that again?
Sure can. I created my style with all these different effects, right? In the top where it says appearance palette, this is my style of what I created. I take that and I can drag it into the graphic style, or I can click on new graphic style. Once I do that, whatever shape I select, maybe it's a circle, and I click on that style is applied to it. Isn't that cool? But you want to see something even cooler? Graphic styles, text. Click on it. And because I have a lot of like transform and stuff like that, it's trying to figure out how to make it work.
Wait, so how do you open the graphic styles tab?
Window. It's the window tablet
Yeah.
or palette, and then graphic styles. So in this, because I have a lot of craziness going on with a lot of different points and stuff like that, there's twisting and turning and scribbling and all that kind of stuff. So what happens here is it's trying to process all that information. And so, again, you can modify this on any one of these shapes. So like, for instance, the graphic styles one, the text, I don't like all the stuff that's coming off the back. So I can go here to my stroke, inside zigzag, I can click on zigzag and change it from, let me click here, and I'm going to bring the size or the ridges down, or I can click here and it's going to start to update based off what I do. So here, smooth, I need to take this stuff down. Come on. Bring this down. And then the other part is the transform on the top stroke. I want to take that transform. Actually, it's the scribble. Oh no, it's transform. I'll take this down to 1 copy. Click on preview. And let's say 0 copies. Take the rotation off. Bring the scale back. Distance. And so you can start off with a style, and then this is how it starts to work. Now, one of the things here, I don't know if you can tell from your screen, but you see how some of it looks good and clean and kind of curved, curved around the edges. Now, what happens is you get a lot of these points, and the points, because you have a lot of graphic or points from the type, you can click on the word stroke, and this limit here affects how these edges kind of come off the text. So I can take the limit down. Let me say I'm gonna try 5. Let's see what happens. That doesn't do it. So let me take that limit down to 1. And now the limit basically allows us to kind of get all those pointy edges away from this. So I'm going to move this off to the side, move this off to the side. Now this is based off the style that we had created. Highly customizable. I can take this, change color at any point. And it becomes the thing. All you have to do is change the way it looks. So maybe that's yellow. Maybe this one is green, or purple. So you can customize anything about that style at any point in time. Okay. Now, how do we make, like this one was just playing. We're playing, we're just trying to learn how do you apply something to it, how do you use it again. This scribble effect can also become a style, right? So this is my scribble effect, and I can come over here to the path and drag that into my style. So now it's a scribble effect. And if I wanted to use it instead of this, I can click on that style and it replaces it. So these styles can be used over and over again, which is really, really cool. But the question is still, how do we get something that looks like this, and also how do we get to this? Okay. So the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to learn how to take the style back to its normal state, right? So like if you apply the graphic style to your text, now the other cool thing about this is that it's still text, so I can still type in text that applies to that style. So now, no matter what, it's part of the style, I can use it, and it's not going to affect my information. All right. So how do I get this to look like, the other thing, or how do I get back to where I was before? When you have your information selected and you want to go back to its default settings, in the appearance palette, there's a little kind of like, I don't know, no smoking sign, and you click on clear appearance and it brings you back to the default. So it takes all the information off of it and brings you back to your default. Okay. This effect here, I suggest that we create a box that looks like the effect that we want to get, and then we apply it to our text. And so that's how I'm able to get the different effect here. Multiple fills, multiple strokes, and that type of thing there. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to show you how to get the text with this gradient fill. This is multiple fills here, and then I want you to find out how to get this soft edge around the thing. So we're going to use one letter. So we'll use one letter, one box, and we'll get this effect, and then you guys can try to stylize your own type. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to use the letter E. You can choose any letter that you want, and also create your letter and create your box. So I'm going to create a letter, and that particular letter I want to be something that's bold, so I'll say whatever we have here. I'm going to choose a bold font. Okay. And then I also want a rectangle. Rectangle, square, whatever you want to do. All right. So the letter is for the thing that we're going to apply it to. The box is for our style that we're going to create. So in analyzing this, basically we have a white fill, and then we have a gradient that's on top of it that goes like from green, like a greenish color, and then we have around that like a dark shadow type effect on the letter, and then we have another color, and then we have a stroke on top of that. So we're gonna just basically start from the back and then work our way up, right? So the first thing I want you to do is I want us to select the box, and we're gonna add a stroke to it, and we'll use the let's say the light green. We'll use like this like a light green color, and we'll make the amount to be like, let's say 4 point. Okay, and then we'll fill the inside with a darker green, like this green here. So I have a light green and I have a darker green. That's going to be the start to our stylized text. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add another fill. So I'm going to select the fill shape, add a new fill, and we're going to call this like a almost like a white, but it's like a grayish white. It's this first one here. It's like 5% black. Okay, and so we have to make that fill smaller than the green. So we have to go to Effects, Distort Transform, Transform, and we're going to bring the scale size down. So I'm going to bring this down to, I'm going to make sure I put my preview on so you can see it. So I'm bringing this down in size to about 80% in both sides. And I'll maybe do something like that. So it's like 80, 85. Right? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add like a gradient fill on top of that white. So I'm going to add a new fill. And in this one, it's basically going to be, I'm going to go to my swatches. Where's my swatches? Swatches. Okay, and then I'm going to add this gradient fill. And in my gradient palette, I have to change the direction. So I can change the direction here in the angle, or I can just grab my gradient tool and click and drag from top to bottom. Now remember what we talked about earlier is that this information can become transparent. So when I select on the black swatch, that black swatch is going to now, instead of the color black, I'm going to make that color green. But you have to take that color and drag it onto that swatch. And then the white basically is now going to become transparent. So the opacity is going to be down to 0. All right, so now I get this green color that transitions into the white.
Wait, I'm having trouble applying the gradient. It's just like not sticking.
Okay, so to apply the gradient, basically, let me see, I'm gonna just get a solid color. So to apply the gradient, basically inside this, you have to select the fill that you want to apply the gradient to. You have that fill selected in your appearance palette?
Yeah.
All right, now in your swatches panel, you want to choose this white to black gradient. That work?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in the angle of your gradient tool, you can double click on it. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to type in 90 degrees. And if you want them to switch, like black to white or whatever, it doesn't matter. You can put -90, or you can just kind of drag and it will, drag from left to right or top to bottom, and it'll change the direction. You can also click here to flip it. Okay. So what we did was we took our green color and we dragged that green color onto the black swatch. And then we selected the white, I guess to call it stopper or triangle, and then we set that opacity to 0. Okay. Now, this particular transform that we had on the white, we don't have to go back into transform and do it again. We can actually copy this effect to the other fill. And the way we do that is we take this transform, hold Option, and drag it right onto the other fill. And so what that does is it scales it basically right into place where the other fill was. So what I did was I took the transform from this fill, held Option, and dragged it right on top of this one. So this is what basically it starts to look like. There's one fill, there's the white, and then there's this gradient that goes on top of that white. This is it without the white. One last thing that we're going to do is we're going to add another fill that's darker below this one, so it acts like a shadow, and then we're going to soften the edges, and then we're going to apply it to our letter. So the fill that we have that's modified in terms of the scale, we're going to take that and basically, I'm going to hide this so you can see, but I'll take this one and I can actually just take it and drag it to duplicate it, and then I'm going to change the color. Change it to a dark color. The transform options is going to allow me to move this. When I click on the transform options in the appearance palette, I will pull this up, and in the move settings, I'm going to move this down Right, so I move this down and over. And that value can depend on whatever you want it to be, but I'm just going to use like a 0.1 value. Okay. And when I press OK, these two values are very very sharp. They're very hard edged. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that this is a little bit softer. So for each one of these, the white and the dark value, I'm going to go into my effects. I'm going to go to what is it? Stylized feather. And so what happens is I feather it just slightly around the edge, right? And it kind of looks a little weird. But if I didn't do that, I'll take this away, I push cancel. I can apply it to the dark one here, and I can go to effect. Stylized feather. And so it kind of acts like a drop shadow. Okay. You also have the ability to do something like, where is it? Extrude and bevel. So like if I choose my white shape, go to 3D, extrude and bevel. This is a little bit more complicated, but you could do like something that looks a little bit more 3D, like a block, like a 3D block. But this definitely takes time to render, and so it'll spin and spin and spin. That's something that you do at the very end if you want to do something like that. So using extrude and bevel is an option. Another option to kind of soften the edges is using the, where is it here? It is the blur. So I use Gaussian blur. And what Gaussian blur does is it does a better job of feathering the edges than feather. So I have a little bit more control on in terms of like where it says radius. So I can bring down the radius, and it makes the edges just soft, but it doesn't feather it like the feather does. So I use Gaussian blur to kind of soften edges a little bit, and I also will do that same thing with the dark shape. So I go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, click on preview, and I can actually take this and make it look like it's just a little softer than it would be, you know, and sort of like this kind of drop shadow that makes the edges look a little soft. Now with this, I think I'm ready to apply this to my shape. All right, so do something like that. And now I created a style, and now I want to see what it looks like on the text. So this is my style. I go to my appearance palette, drag this into my graphic style, and when I select my text, I click on it, and this is what happens. Now sometimes, because of the size of the text or the size of the new shape or whatever, things start to look a little weird. But it doesn't matter because you can always go back in and adjust. So for instance, the outside doesn't match the inside. So what I need to do is, with this shape selected, I go back into my fill here, and I need to decrease the size because everything else looks good, but except for this. So I'm going to decrease the size here. I'm going to go to well, actually, I'll increase my size of this shape. So I'll go into my transform, uh, get my scale, click on preview. Okay, I'll do that, and I'll do, come on. Stop. Computer's not fast enough for me. It can't keep up. Okay, so I got my scale, which is at like 99. And then I'll do the same thing with the other one. Transform. This was at like 99. This was at 98. Preview. It just keeps going. Stop. And then, so what's happening is it's trying to, fit itself and adjust what this style looked like over here. And if you wanted, if you wanted to go back in and you can try to like really go ahead and adjust things or whatever. But what happens is if you try to do this on top of your text by itself, you can't do it directly onto the text. So you have to do it on a shape, and then you can stylize it back from the graphic style. So I'll do 95. Okay. And so from here, you'll start to get your stylized text, and you'll start to kind of modify how these things look. Now this also, again, it works for other shapes. Like I take this and I create a circle, and where's my style? I click on it, and it creates that style. So that's a really cool thing about graphic styles. You can apply them to almost anything. Sometimes the text gets a little weird because depending on what shape the letter is, if I do a T, it could look pretty decent. Or if I did a, let's see, in Q, maybe. Q looks okay. You just have to, you have to kind of make some adjustments. But for the most part, it gets pretty close and accurate to what you're trying to do. What I want you guys to do is I just want you to focus on taking some text and trying to stylize the text, right? So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to try to figure out how to stylize the word playing cards, right? Now, let's analyze this. I have a couple of different shapes here. Okay, I have one gradient fill that goes from like a light cream color to transparent. Then the other fill is strictly gray. I have a white outline, and then I have a dark gray outline, a light gray outline, and then a darker gray outline. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 strokes, 2 fills. Okay? On these shapes, there's 2 strokes, 1 fill. On the playing cards, or the words playing, it's looks like I only have 1 gradient fill. which is like a dark red to a light red, and then I have one, the red, the light red stroke, the light gray stroke, dark, light, dark. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strokes on there. And basically each one just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's set to the outside so that it does not affect anything on the inside. Okay. There's one thing that I want to show you that you can't see here is you see how close these text objects are? And if you apply a stroke, usually when the text is this close to each other, each one will go on top of the other. But right now, they all share the same stroke. Can you think of anything that does that, what we showed before? We did this, huh? Yeah, but uniform or unite. Yeah, and that can be found where? The Pathfinder. So, because you know that, the one thing that you should also know is when I type in, let's say, okay, so I type in this information. What? Stop. All right, so I type in my information. I'm going to take off stroke. Right, so I'm just going to put this stuff in here. And take off my transform. Okay. And so if I didn't have transform on these things, they would pretty much show up, you know, pretty good here like this. And let me increase, if I increase my stroke, take my Gaussian blur off. The Gaussian blur will really slow down your view time. So if you put on Gaussian blur, make sure you put it on at the end because it's going to really slow you down. All right, so if I have these things that are close together, and let's say I add another stroke, make that stroke bigger. Okay. Put it up here. Dark. All right, so this is what starts to happen. As they overlap, actually this one doesn't overlap too much, but as the letters start to overlap, they don't actually become like one. Like even this right here tells you, it gives you like, it starts to eat inside the text. So that means that when I select this, this blue stroke has to be set to the outside. All right, but I can't because it's on the text, so it doesn't allow me to set it to the outside. So what I have to do is I have to actually create a little box or a shape or circle or whatever it is, and I have to apply this style. Where's my graphic style? I have to apply the style to this box. Okay, and then from here I have to adjust these settings. So I have to say, put that to the outside, bring the size down. Okay, and then when I bring this style back in, Now I can apply that to the new text. You see how I fixed that real quick? Because I had to apply it here first and then apply it back. But this can give you really cool looking text pretty quick. You can see how it looks really nice. And it doesn't really, oh, this is what I was talking about here. See how it overlaps right there? The C. So what I need to do is I need to make the blue unite. So in order for me to do that, I need to come over here and I need to go into this text object. And I need to go to Pathfinder, add. And when I go Pathfinder, add, did it work? Pathfinder, add, intersect, preview. Which one is it? It must be, oh, it's the back. Is it the back one? No. Let me take this and put it to the top. How's that not working? Pathfinder. It should say if I add or intersect, apply new effect. Well, that's weird. Let me mouse this back. Let me try it over here. Stroke. Pathfinder. Add. Okay. And then choose this, choose that. There it goes. I couldn't, no, man, didn't work. All right, I'm gonna have to look up that. I'm gonna have to play around with that a little bit, but this should work. Let me try it with this one. Actually, why is that not working? This should work, but I don't know. I'll have to play around with that. The only workaround is turning this text into outlines and then, you know, doing the offset path. But you don't need to, you shouldn't have to do offset path. Because you can do it though, but you shouldn't have to do offset path. Here's path, offset path. If you wanted to, if you really wanted to get it right, I could go to stroke here, and inside here I can do path, offset path, okay, and then try to do my Pathfinder add. You see that? Let me show you this again. Stroke, I'll bring this down. I'll go to path, offset path. This is my preview. See how they overlap like that? I can bring the value down just a tad. Oops. And then I press OK. And then after I offset the path, I can go to Effects, Pathfinder, Add. And now they share the same stroke, and that stroke can also be rounded as well. All right. So what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to take time and just try to play and stylize text. Now you don't have to do playing cards at the moment, but you can just choose a word, and I want you to set it up like this, where you have your box. So you're gonna do two styles. One is it could be, I don't know, it could be random styles, but you're gonna do two styles and two boxes. So you'll set it up like this, and you'll set it up like that, and this will have a style applied to your text. Okay, and that's gonna be your homework for coming in next class. You're gonna have two styles created. And your text should still be editable. Okay? Any questions? I'm going to put this up just so you can kind of review it. I need to really kind of edit some of the things out a little bit, but I'm gonna try to have this up for you by today. Any questions? A lot of information. All right, see you later.